There comes a time in life when noise becomes exhausting, the constant explaining, the endless proving, the need to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted. I've lived in front of the world my whole life, stadiums full of people, cameras flashing, critics talking. But I've learned something powerful along the way. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any victory. When you disappear, not in anger, not in pride, but in peace, something begins to shift. The people who once overlooked you start to notice. The space you left behind, the noise fades, and what remains is truth. Your absence becomes your message, you see. Most people only understand value when it's gone. They only appreciate consistency when it's missing. And when you finally stop showing up, when you stop giving your energy to people who took it for granted, they start to feel the weight of your silence. They start to feel 10 things, 10 realizations that reveal not only who they are, but who you've become. Because sometimes disappearing isn't about running away. It's about returning to yourself. The sting of rejection at first, they don't understand. They feel a sting, a sharp, cold realization that the person they thought would always be there isn't. They thought your loyalty was endless. They thought no matter what they did, you would stay. But when you disappear, that illusion breaks. Suddenly they feel what you once felt: confusion, loss, rejection. You don't respond like before. You don't react. You don't chase. And that silence, it hurts them more than any argument ever could. Because in that silence they finally realize what control truly feels like, and they no longer have it. For the first time, they are on the outside looking in. They start to ask themselves questions. Why did they stop caring? Did I push them away? Did I go too far? The sting of rejection becomes a mirror, showing them the reflection of their own neglect. You see, people rarely understand your worth when you give it freely. But when you withdraw, when you stop being accessible, when you choose distance over drama, they start to see what they've lost. And it terrifies them, because deep down, they always assumed you'd stay. They believed you needed them. But your disappearance proves something they never expected. You didn't. You were the anchor all along. And without you, they're lost at sea. 2. The void of missing you. After the sting fades, the emptiness begins. They start to miss you. Not just your presence, but your energy, your stability, your strength. They miss how your words had weight, how your presence brought calm, how your focus pushed them to do better. You were the quiet force that made everything steady. And now that you're gone, everything feels off balance. The conversations that once flowed easily now feel hollow. The laughter that once felt natural now feels forced. They start remembering the little things, how you always answered, how you cared even when they didn't. They replay your kindness in their mind. But now it hurts because it's no longer theirs. That's what people never understand. When you leave peacefully, you haunt them silently, because your energy was a gift, and they wasted it. Now, every day without you feels like a reminder of everything they took for granted. They start seeking that same feeling somewhere else, but they can't find it. Because what you gave them wasn't attention, it was presence. And presence can't be replaced. So they live with the void, that quiet, unexplainable emptiness that whispers your name in every moment of stillness. And the more they try to fill it, the deeper it becomes. 3. Overwhelming curiosity. Then curiosity takes over. Silence turns into obsession. They start to wonder, where are you now? Who are you talking to? Are you thinking about them? Or have you already forgotten? Your disappearance shakes their sense of control, because when you were there, they could read you, reach you, predict you. Now they can't. You've become a mystery, and mystery is powerful. They scroll through old photos, check your last scene, ask mutual friends subtle questions. They tell themselves they're just curious, but curiosity, when fueled by guilt, becomes obsession. They replay your last words, looking for meaning they ignored before. They overanalyze your silence. And slowly, they realize that the power has shifted. They used to own your attention. Now, you own their thoughts. Because when you disappear, your absence becomes louder than any message could ever be. They can't stop thinking about you, because they can't control what they don't understand. That's the irony of silence. It creates curiosity, and curiosity creates longing. And now, the one who once made you question your worth, it's questioning their own. 4. Deep silence. When the curiosity fades, silence becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, they start to see everything they ignored. The words they said without thinking. The times they made you feel small. The moments when you gave everything, and they gave nothing. Now there's nowhere to hide. No one left to blame. The silence you left behind forces them to look inward. It's strange, isn't it? The same peace that healed you now unsettles them. They begin to feel guilt, heavy guilt. Not the kind you can escape with excuses, but the kind that whispers at night, you lost something pure. They replay the memories, the laughter, the arguments. Every scene becomes a lesson they refused to learn when they had the chance. You see, your absence becomes their teacher, and that's the irony of growth. Sometimes you have to walk away so others can finally face themselves. In your silence, they confront their own immaturity, their pride, their carelessness, and for the first time, they realize they weren't the strong one in the story. You were. 5. The urge to pursue you, then something shifts again. The guilt turns into longing. The silence becomes unbearable. They start reaching out little messages, old photos. Hey, I was just thinking about you. But what they really want isn't conversation. It's connection. They want to feel close to the energy that used to center them. Suddenly the roles are reversed. You're no longer the one waiting for attention. Now they're the ones chasing presence. They try to recreate the bond, but it doesn't work because they're chasing a version of you that no longer exists. You've grown, you've changed, you've healed. And healing makes you harder to reach for those who still live in the past. You see, when you disappear to rebuild yourself, you come back with boundaries. And boundaries feel like rejection to people who benefited from your lack of them. So they keep trying, promising they'll do better, saying things like, I've changed, hoping your forgiveness will bring back their comfort. But deep down, you know the truth. They're not in love with you. They're in love with a version of themselves that existed when you made them feel whole. And that's a feeling you no longer need to give. 6. The battle between relief and regret. At first, they tell themselves they're fine. They pretend that letting go of you was freedom. They go out, they laugh louder, they post more. For a moment they even believe it. But late at night, when the noise fades, something starts to ache. Because freedom without peace feels exactly like loneliness. They begin to feel that strange tug between relief and regret. Relief, because the pressure of your standards is gone. Regret, because those standards were the only thing pushing them to be better. They remember how your presence demanded focus, how your energy carried weight. And now, without that presence, everything feels lighter but also emptier. They start to see what your consistency really meant. You weren't a burden. You were balance. You weren't controlling. You were clarity. And losing that clarity makes the world blurred. So they try to fill the silence with distractions, new faces, new habits, new escapes. But nothing fits. Because you can't replace peace with noise. You can only learn to live without it. Until you realize you want it back. That's when regret sinks deepest. Not when they miss you, but when they finally understand why they do. 7. The desire to play the game. Panic changes people. When control slips from their hands, many don't choose honesty, they choose strategy. They don't reach for the truth, they reach for tactics. That's when the game begins. Suddenly the smiles get brighter online. The captions get louder. The stories look happier than the reality they're trying to survive. It isn't joy. It's performance. They post to be seen. They speak to be heard. But nothing they do brings back what your presence once gave. Stability, direction, peace. Some will try to make you jealous. New faces, new places, new noise. A parade of distractions, dressed as moving on. But you know the truth. Attention isn't connection. And the loudest room in the world still feels empty when the heart is quiet. I've seen this in football, in life everywhere. When fear of loss arrives, ego puts on a mask. It acts brave while feeling broken. It plays strong while shaking inside. That's what the game is, a mask. And I had to learn this the hard way. When you step out of the arena of games, you step into the field of growth. So when the performances begin, when the timeline turns into a theater, when the posts become a plea, you breathe. You don't react. You don't chase. Because silence protects truth. Because peace is not a move, it's your position. And from that position you see clearly. The game was never about love. It was about control. You're done playing. You're done proving. If they want the truth, they'll have to meet you there without masks, without tactics, without the crowd. Until then, you choose distance, not as punishment, as discipline. 8. The crushing weight of silence. Silence isn't empty. Silence has weight. At first it feels soft, almost like a rest. But with time, it becomes heavy, honest, undeniable. Your silence becomes a mirror they cannot put down. Every day, without your voice, without your reassurance, without your steady presence, the truth grows louder. They once believed arguments were the worst pain, but arguments gave them something to push against. Silence gives them only themselves. No more explaining to you. No more convincing you. No more rewriting the story to make the ending feel kinder. Just the reality of what happened, and who they were when it did. I felt this in my own way. The nights after defeat, the training grounds when the stadiums were empty. The silence was heavy, yes, but it was honest. And honesty, even when it hurts, is how you grow. Your silence teaches them what your words could not. That presence is a privilege, not a promise. It shows them the cost of neglect. It shows them the price of comfort. They begin to understand that losing contact with you hurts more than any sharp sentence ever did. Because silence doesn't attack. Silence reveals. It reveals the value you carried. It reveals the effort you made. It reveals the balance you brought without ever demanding applause. And in that revelation, the weight becomes too much to carry. That's when the heart whispers the sentence the ego fears most. I was wrong. And when they finally hear it, really hear it, the pride that kept them distant begins to crack. The walls that kept them safe begin to fall. All because you chose the strength most people never master, the strength to be silent. 9. The fear that brings them crawling back. Fear changes the volume of the heart. When the possibility of forever without you becomes real, the voice inside them gets louder than the performance they show the world. That's when apologies appear. Messages that start with, hey, calls late at night. Words they should have said when you were still there to hear them. I'm sorry, I get it now. I didn't know what I had. And maybe they mean it. Maybe, in this moment, they truly do. But here is what your journey has taught you. Apologies don't rebuild foundations. Habits do. Feelings don't restore trust. Consistency does. Fear can bring people to your door. Character is what keeps them standing there. So you listen with compassion, but you decide with clarity. Because love without boundaries becomes sacrifice without honor. And you've learned to honor yourself. If they return with humility, with patience, with proof, you will see it in time. But you no longer rescue anyone from the work that only they can do. The old you would have rushed to fix it. The healed you lets truth take its time. And in that time, something beautiful happens. You realize you are no longer negotiating with loneliness. You are protecting your peace. Their fear may bring them back. Your strength decides what happens next. And strength, now, is quiet. Strength, now, is selective. Strength, now, is choosing a future where love is partnership, not penance. 10. The realization of emotional independence. And then, finally, the story changes. Not for them, but for you. Because this whole time, while they were drowning in regret, you were learning how to breathe again. You were rebuilding the parts of yourself that you once gave away to ice. You were rediscovering silence, not as punishment, but as peace. You started to understand something that changes everything. Your happiness was never meant to depend on their presence. You realized that the power you were searching for in others was always within you, waiting, quietly, patiently. That's when everything clicks. You don't need their apology to forgive. You don't need their attention to feel seen. You don't need their validation to feel valuable. Because when you disappear to find yourself, you don't come back the same. If you come back softer, but stronger, quieter, but deeper, kinder, but wiser, you come back understanding that solitude is not loneliness, it's self-respect. And that's something they can feel, even from miles away. They sense it in your calm, in your discipline, in your new peace. And nothing unsettles people more than the realization that the person they once hurt no longer needs them. You've broken the cycle. You've taken the power back, not to dominate, but to live freely. Because emotional independence isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the ability to say, I choose peace. I choose growth. One choose me. When disappearing becomes freedom. When I look back now, I realize disappearing wasn't about losing people. It was about finding myself. Sometimes you have to step away from the noise to remember your own sound. You have to lose the crowd to rediscover your rhythm. You have to walk alone to understand what peace truly means. People may never understand your silence. They may call it pride, or distance, or coldness. But silence is none of those things. Silence is growth. Silence is control. Silence is choosing not to explain your worth to those who are blind to it. When you disappear, you learn who still reaches out, who waits, and who only misses the attention, not the connection. You begin to see that your energy is sacred, your time is gold, and not everyone deserves access to both. So don't feel guilty for pulling away. Don't apologize for protecting your peace. You're not selfish for wanting silence, you're wise for choosing it. Because in silence, you build discipline. In solitude, you find vision. And in distance, you find direction. So if you're listening to this right now, wondering whether it's time to step away, trust the pull. Trust the silence. The world may not understand it, but your future will thank you for it. Remember this, when you disappear to grow, you don't lose anything worth keeping. You only lose what was blocking your light. And when you return, not to prove anything, not to win anyone back, but to live fully as who you've become, the world will see the difference. Because silence builds power, distance builds strength, and peace builds the kind of greatness that can never be taken away.